Welcome back to ModCons. Today I'm joined by Sir Desmond Swayne. Elected as the MP for New Forest West in 1997, Sir Desmond Swayne was knighted in the Queen's 90th birthday honours list in 2016 and was made a Privy Councillor in 2012. He served as Parliamentary Private Secretary to the Prime Minister David Cameron from 2010 to 2012 and Minister of State for the Department of International Development. He is one of Parliament's most exemplary orators with famous speeches touching on everything from Swahili antelope to vaccines and dirty tongues. He is unsurprisingly a TikTok superstar, and we're absolutely delighted to have him with us today on ModCons. So Desmond, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you, and thank you for that build-up.
Yeah, there we go. So Desmond, can I call you Desmond?
You can call me whatever you like.
Thank you so much. So you were in the chamber for the Leader of Opposition's response to the budget last week and seem to be enjoying it. How was it?
Well, I've been listening to leaders of the opposition respond to the budget. It's the most difficult speech that anyone ever makes.
Right.
And easily in the last 28 years, that was the best response I've had.
Oh,
no
fantastic.
quarter was given whatsoever.
Lovely.
And normally you get a sort of series of platitudes. Well, we'll look at the government's proposals in detail and hold them to account, but to go for the jugular from the very start, I thought it was a tremendous performance.
Yes.
I thought I was going to faint at one stage.
It was good. The Cheerios line was my favourite one, I have to say. So have you got any other standout Commons moments?
There are people that you would always see if you saw their name on the Annunciator, which is the screen all around Parliament, tells you who's speaking in the chamber. You saw George Galloway, strange enough, tremendous orator.
He is good.
He may be wired to the moon. You may disagree profoundly with anything he says, but he's certainly a great orator.
Yeah.
Jacob Rees-Mogg, again, one of my favourite.
Fantastic.
William Hague.
Yeah.
Tony Benn. Tony Benn was a fantastic speaker as well.
Yeah.
Those would be the greats that I would rush to the Commoners to hear.
Yes. And you seem to be quite a fan of the new 2024 intake.
Yeah, that's
any
good.
good standouts there?
Oh, Lincoln Jopp's pretty good. He's great. And he's very good at questions as well.
Yes.
Yeah, he's scored a couple of bullseyes.
He is very fun.
Recently, and the others are all pretty good.
Yeah.
What I do dislike about parliamentary performances is when people read verbatim.
Yes.
It is actually against the rules, but they're never enforced.
Yes.
I can understand people referring to notes, but reading verbatim is dreadful, and so much so when it's just a question.
Right.
For heaven's sakes, if you can't remember your question.
I did see a clip of you saying, raising this in the House of Commons the other day.
Well, the Deputy Speaker had lamented the fact that not many people had got in during the follow-up to a statement.
Yeah.
Because people's questions were so long.
Yeah.
Well, I merely pointed out that, if people weren't allowed to read them, they would have to remember them, and therefore they'd be shorter.
Yes. And you said back in the day, people used to say reading.
Yes, when I was first elected, if anyone started to read a question, the whole house on both sides would go, reading.
Amazing. Do you think it is a lost art because Keir Starmer can barely string a sentence together without his notes? Is that what modern politics is missing?
I think it's very much more difficult for a minister at the dispatch box because they have a brief that they have to get over for the purpose of the official record,
right.
Particularly if you're dealing with a bill, because the committee stage and report stage of a bill will be used subsequently by the courts to interpret what the will of Parliament was.
Right.
So I think it's a bit more difficult to demand them. I've seen certainly, I by no means criticise Sir Keir Starmer as being the worst,
really?
or anywhere near. There was a junior minister put up, I can't remember which bill it was, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And you need to take a couple of interventions,
right,
just to show you're not frit.
Yes.
But he kept saying, no, I haven't got enough time. And then he finished 3 minutes early.
He just had to stick to his
yeah,
script.
stick to the script, stick to the script, don't deviate from the script.
Well, that's Labour all over, really, isn't it? So
I'm
you,
afraid we were as bad.
no, no, don't say that. So as well as Parliamentary Private Secretary to David Cameron as Prime Minister, you also served as his Parliamentary Private Secretary as Leader of the Opposition. What was that time like, and what advice do you have for those doing that role in the future?
Well, I did two. I did two bouts. I was Michael Howard's Parliamentary Private Secretary just for just over a year. And then I expected to be the victim of regime change and
Right.
was quite surprised when David asked me to carry on. So I did full 5 years of opposition as leader, as parliamentary private secretary to the leader.
Yeah.
It's a very peculiar role. I mean, it's called the bag carrier. Well, I never touched my hand. My hand never laid on a bag. It's a sort of combination between the military assistant, the adjutant, concierge, and school fag,
Right.
And you're it's a as I say, it's quite a demanding role because one, your job is to be the conduit of how the parliamentary party is feeling,
Right.
but equally you're part of the team. You're like not wholly dissimilar from the whip's office. You are partly, bringing information the other way,
Right.
so that when someone comes to you and complains about a dreadful shadow cabinet decision, I can say, no, I was there.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that.
Right.
And of course, during that time, we had a number of well, first of all, we had all sorts of issues over Europe.
Yes.
With as we moved ever so slowly towards
Yes.
the position that we finally got the party to. So it's one of those jobs where you're really that official in the Roman Empire who stands immediately behind Caesar, within earshot, just behind his ear,
Right.
as they do the triumphal march through Rome, whispering continually in his ear, "Remember, O Caesar, you're mortal."
Yeah.
Because once you become prime minister, hey, everybody wants to talk to you.
Right.
And nobody wants to upset you.
Yes.
And they want to tell you what you want to hear. They want
Right.
to ingratiate yourself with them. And you can get detached and start to believe
your own hype. Yeah.
Exactly. So there are a number of roles in that. I found it a tremendously rewarding experience because you're right at the heart of first the opposition, but then particularly in government, in number 10, you know exactly what's going on, and it's quite exciting, but it can be pretty draining as well. I was thoroughly enjoying it, but I was very relieved to move on.
Yes. So, you've answered why you think Cameron picked you. Do you think it was a
Well, actually,
continuity thing?
it was odd, because we used to cycle. We both, from the Notting Hill set, used to cycle in to Westminster.
Yes.
And when Michael was when he had announced his resignation, but before it had taken place, I said to David in the members' changing room, "Are you going to stand?"
Yeah.
And he was humming and hawing. And I said, "I think you should, and I'd support you." And he said, "Oh, that'd be very good.
Yeah.
That'd be an entree to the right of the party."
Right.
And because I'm so significantly to the right of David.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Liam Fox, who I'd supported in the previous, came up and said, "Desmond, can I count on your support?" And it's very difficult to tell a friend that you're not going to support them. So I said, "Oh yes." So I had to go and see David Cameron and say, "Look, I said I'd support you." Well, but he was very good about it. He said, "Well, when Liam crashes and burns, come back."
And you did.
I did.
Are there roles that are very mysterious and intriguing? Privy Councillor is one of these.
Well, it depends who and where you are. So the only Privy Council meeting which is open to all Privy Councillors, and even that's changed now, it's done by ballot now, is the Accession Council.
Right.
So when the monarch has died and a new one is about to accede to the throne, the tradition was that all Privy Councillors would go.
Right.
The problem is the Privy Councillors have been getting larger and larger and larger.
Yes.
I mean, I think there's two forces at work here. One, we have devalued the currency. There's
Right.
no getting away from
That's
that.
a shame.
Two, you know, longevity. So
Yes.
if you're appointed to the Privy Council, it's a lifetime appointment unless you
Yeah.
get sent to prison or put
Right.
your
Right.
trousers down or hand in the till. Um, and so members of Parliament who are in their prime in the 1950s are still alive,
Yes.
and so the Privy Council continues to grow.
Right.
So at the last Privy Council, they actually had the last Accession Council. They actually had a ballot. You had to
Right.
apply for the
Okay.
ballot, and only those who were successful in the ballot were invited to the Accession Council. So
Right.
I was fortunate.
Nice. You were there.
I was there. But prior to that, a Privy Council meeting is held standing.
Yes.
Interesting.
Interesting.
And it's probably 5 or 6 ministers,
Okay.
usually secretaries of state, and the Lord President of the Council, who in my day was Nick Clegg.
Right. Oh.
And you'd go in, and the official business would be gone through. The Lord President would read the names of the orders in council, and the
Right.
Queen would say approved,
Yeah.
or perhaps deferred.
Yeah. Love it.
And then after that formal business was over, the Lord President says, and that concludes, Your Majesty, the formal business. At which point there was sort of, a relaxation, and you'd have a chat. There would be a
Yes.
chat.
Okay.
Didn't the tour of Canada with the young ones go well? That sort of thing. And then surreptitiously the doors will open. You know that it's time
To go.
time to go. I was very fortunate in that I was also Vice Chamberlain.
Yes.
So the Vice Chamberlain has a private audience.
Wow.
Just you and the monarch
That's
alone
cool.
in the room. And you'd have that sort of every 3 or 4 months, depending on parliamentary business, because you would only go to see the Queen if you had a message from Parliament to convey. So, for example, if there was an appointment in the gift of the Crown and Parliament had the Commons had nominated someone, you would take that along,
Right.
and then you would also bring her response back. And there's a formal procedure for presenting that in the chamber, including walking backwards and all that with your cane of office, which is a bit like a billiard cue.
Amazing. That's so cool. I feel like I was there now. And so on that day, obviously, when the king was proclaimed, what was that like? That room was packed.
It was packed.
Yeah.
I mean, it was well, none of us had ever seen it before,
Yeah.
because it had never been televised
Yes.
before, so we didn't know what was expected. But it was a pleasant bit of English, well,
History.
not just English, because Alex Salmond, who I was
Yes.
at university with,
Wow.
was explaining to me that this was the independence of Scotland as King Charles took that oath, this long convoluted oath about the Church of Scotland, and his determination not to affect its independence,
Right.
and all the rest.
Yeah.
Because
You served as an army officer in the reserves for over 30 years. Why did you want to join?
Well, I suppose it was my equivalent of joining the French Foreign Legion.
Right.
Beau Geste, the pangs of unrequited love at university. I went off and joined the officer training corps,
Yeah.
and I just never got out.
Yeah.
There are some people in the Territorial Army who consider that they have a military career.
Right.
I was just there enjoying it, and also you did get paid,
Yeah.
for someone in the mid-70s at university, getting paid 13 quid for a weekend's training,
Yeah.
that was a
Not
gold
bad.
mine.
Yeah.
So I stuck at it, and I was commissioned into the Territorial Army, and I did it until I was 65 in 60 in 2016.
Wow. Amazing.
But my only operational service,
Yes.
my only real service, was in Iraq in 2003.
That's it. Well, I was coming on to that. So you did serve in the Iraq War in 2003 whilst an MP. Thank you for your service. What are your thoughts on, what was that time like? What are your thoughts on Tony Blair? Do you have any?
Well, I think Tony Blair was a tremendous political phenomenon,
Yes.
and the Labour Party were mad to get rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
He was hugely successful. I think he's the only person who has ever done leader of the opposition well, in the sense that ended up significantly benefiting from
Right.
the
Yeah.
experience. He was a politician a bit like Clinton, one of those people who just goes into a room, people quite like you and,
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
and
yeah.
mob you, and
Yeah.
he just got that connection. Um, as to the decision to invade Iraq, it's I voted for it.
Yeah.
It seemed a good idea at the time,
Right.
and from my experience of being there, it could have turned out very, very differently
Right.
had we done it differently. My take on it was that when we got there and we'd pacified the place, I think that's probably an overstatement, but there was immediate demand for elections.
Yeah.
And the word from Baghdad, from the American administration, and let's face it, they were calling the shots.
Yeah.
We were effectively controlling the 5 southern provinces from Basra, headquarters in Basra. We were determined to push ahead with elections so that the Iraqis could see that they were in control.
Right.
And the word from both the UN and from Baghdad was, no, there's no electoral roll. You can't possibly have elections. You need to wait until it's all. But we went ahead and we held elections in the southern 5 provinces on the basis of the household franchise, because every household had a ration card from the former regime.
Right.
And all these local governments were elected, and the gangsters, the gunmen, the militias didn't get a look in. But of course, having elected those local authorities, because of the directives from Baghdad, we never gave them power.
Right.
And huge frustration built up. And that's when the militias started, because they could do things, they could, armed to do so. And I just remember a meeting. I was based in Nasiriyah, but I remember a meeting in Basra, which the general, raised the question: should we now proceed to disarm the militias?
Yeah.
And the reality was, we had not got the force to do so. And that was part of, we planned for a highly kinetic warfare, and we never had sufficient planning for the peace.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the Blair government let us down.
Yeah.
Oh, well, not just them, but also the American administration.
Yes.
Certainly, we were not able to force our will on the militias. And
I guess we saw that a bit in Afghanistan as well, not being prepared for the aftermath.
Well, I remember when John came to the House of Commons to announce that we were going into Helmand, and it may be that not a shot will be fired. Crikey, if we'd had any idea what we were really letting ourselves in for, it would have been a very different story. I doubt very much we'd have done it.
Right. And on defence, obviously, it's hugely important to Conservatives and a lot of the British public. And we've seen that Keir Starmer said he's going to increase defence spending by 2.5% by 2027. Do you think that's enough? And particularly when that uplift is going on, basically the botched Chagos deal?
Right. No, it's not enough. And it's not soon enough. And the danger is with, we're going to do this in 2027, is you don't know how you're going to do it. How are you going to pay for it? That's the difficulty. It's on the never.
Yeah.
And I think you've got, if you're dealing with government expenditure, you've got to be realistic about how it's to be paid for. Can we really envisage spending such sums on defence as we used to in the past, such a proportion of our national income, when we have a benefits bill of £300 million growing, even with a significant bounty at this last budget, with 4.3 million people on benefits that do not require them to seek work, a figure growing by 130,000 a month. This is just madness. Unless you can control that there's going to be no money available for anything.
No, absolutely not. And it's one of those things where Rachel Reeves is telling you that they're reforming it whilst dishing out more money. It's very maddening.
Let's face it, they abandoned the modest reform.
Right.
The
5 billion.
they weren't, I mean, it wasn't they were going to cut the bill, they were going to try and just restrain the acceleration of its growth.
Yeah, by not very much. Now, switching tack slightly, you were a schoolmaster between 1981 and 1987. Is that where you picked up your oratory skills?
No, I'd become something of an orator at school because I was at single-sex school, and the only time you got to meet girls was the debating society because girls from the high school would come to join us in debates. So that's why we all went to debates. And one way of, pulling birds was to speak with great authority.
I love that. I love that.
So that's where I got my interest in debating and indeed my interest in politics.
Yes, I love that. And so, obviously, having been in the teaching world, what are your thoughts on teaching as it is now? We're seeing Bridget Phillipson says she wants to get 6,500 more teachers, but we're seeing a lot less people going into the profession. Do you think that's because of pay? Do you think it's because of the value that's put on teaching by society? Is it just unappealing? What do you
I think
are
it's
the
all
reasons?
of those.
Yeah.
I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed teaching.
Yeah.
I had a great time. And if I'd known that my wife was going to be devoted to her career in the City of London, not going to be devoted to her career in the City of London and want to raise a family quite so soon, I might have stayed in teaching rather than, because I always wanted to be a politician. Ultimately, I felt
Yeah.
the onus was on me to give up and move to London.
Yeah.
But I thoroughly enjoyed teaching, and it was something that, if your results were good, no one would trouble you.
Right.
Whereas now you've got this huge bureaucracy
Yeah.
that's been imposed, and I can see how we got there. I mean, I do remember once as a governor of a school, listening. There was a time when the teaching profession collective, or a significant minority of the teaching profession collectively took leave of their senses.
Right.
And there was mayhem with mixed ability teaching in classes. And I remember, the timetable whizzing past me at a governor's meeting and just observing that strangely there were no times on it. Oh, Mr. Swayne, each class will be divided into a number of tables, and each table will be doing something quite different, and the children move freely between the tables. And that sort of mayhem. And I thought, well, a middle-class child will go home and their parents will teach them to read. As I taught mine, they certainly didn't learn it at school.
Yeah.
Because they were in this look-say method where, you get a word that you're supposed to memorize. You bring home as your homework, you memorize that word rather than learning the code, cat.
Yes.
But I think 20% of the children in that school were speaking English as a foreign language, and a very significant proportion were going home to bed and breakfast accommodation.
Yeah.
This is their only chance in life.
Yeah.
And, teaching in that way is fine for a middle-class child, but for them, it's their only chance, and it was wrecking it. So that's part of it. I think pay is clearly part of it as well, but equally, if you spoke to my parents' generation, so when I went to become a teacher, my parents were really chuffed because the status of teachers in their minds was a respected profession.
Yes.
They looked up to their teachers. How is it we've devalued that currency? Could it be anything to do with the unions? Who have adopted a shop floor mentality? Strike action.
Yeah.
If you adopt those practices, well, you'll be treated as if you were just a shop floor worker.
Yeah.
I think the professional nature of and status of the profession has been devalued by those ghastly conferences that would take place of the NUT over Easter, and you'd see all these people in woolly jumpers covered in badges talking a load of political nonsense. That has trashed the view of the profession.
Yeah. Well, on that, like with Labour, their main education their main kind of policy or for education is free school meals, that they seem to think that's the solution to everything. Is that really the kind of solution to a good education?
No. And why give everyone free school meals
Yes.
when
Sorry.
some of them don't need it? Of course, you provide, and it's perfectly possible to provide a free school meal system for those who are in straitened circumstances without it being obvious and known,
Right.
and without
Yes.
singling them out.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So why would you waste resources on feeding everyone? And I do think it is not the role of the state to feed your children.
No, or brush their teeth.
Quite.
Also, talking about your career. So, in your maiden speech, you pay tribute to your predecessor, Sir Patrick McNair Wilson. You said that his singular achievement was that after 28 years, he could hand over New Forest much as he found it. Does this sentiment still stand? Would you want the same to be said about you? And do you believe in the modern or current conservative penchant for build, baby, build?
You certainly can't build baby build in the New Forest because it is a national park.
Right.
And
That's
that puts very significant difficulties on those settlements, which are just outside the national park,
Right.
because that's where all the pressure is,
Goes,
because
yeah.
you can't do it in the national park. So it's got to be above. I mean, certainly I don't get a mailbag anymore. Everybody does it by email.
Yeah.
I mean, if I get a letter now, I respond in manuscript.
Yeah.
But the greatest issue over the years in my inbox has been the shortage of housing.
Right.
People who've been born and brought up in the New Forest have no prospect of being able to rent or buy anything anywhere near where they've grown up. And there's huge pressure on housing. We haven't built enough for 30 years. And the difficulty is you've therefore got a desperate need for housing, people wanting you to build.
Yeah.
But equally, nobody who's already got a house wants anything built anywhere near them.
Right.
And so you've got to find a way of squaring that circle. And I think we were almost getting there under proposals by Michael Gove, where the local authority would have much more, the planning authority would have much more say over what, not just where, but what.
Yes.
And design.
Yes.
And local, building in the stone of the local character,
Right.
all those things.
Yes.
I think you would have, if you made the housing much more in tune with the local community, you would have had much less opposition to it. But at the moment, it's up to the developer to decide exactly what he wants to build. You either grant his application or run the risk of not granting it and ending up at appeal and costing an awful lot of money to the local taxpayers.
Right. Well, that is a thing, like building beautifully. And the king himself, in his book, he proposed that people, like you say, building in the natural stone, keeping in keeping with the area. So I guess that's something, I don't know if Labour are really looking at that.
Well, I think there is a the moment you start going down that road, you are going to add cost, and you are going to add time to the to the planning process, and that's the difficulty when you've already got a crisis. Right, let's just pack them in. I think the greatest difficulty the Labour government is going to face with its targets is, hey, there's a shortage of builders, and secondly, it's not given the costs involved at the moment. So many builders are simply finding it not profitable to build.
Right, that's it. That's absolutely right. And so now going back to oratory, something we've talked about a bit, you are regarded as one of the Parliament's greatest orators, as I've said, but it's not just in Parliament where you have flexed your oratorial talents. You've also appeared a number of times at the Oxford Union. And in one of your Oxford Union debates, you said that the answer to every problem is not more government, and you believe that the real drivers of progress and prosperity are individual initiative, enterprise, and effort. In Rachel Reeves's 2025 budget, she talked of opponents to investment who believe the only good thing a government can do is get out of the way. Well, I guess we are opponents to investment because I want her out of my wallet. What can the public do to protect themselves from Labour over the next few years, apart from to vote Conservative at any opportunity?
Well, that is the most important.
Yes.
But what can they do to protect them? Well, I mean, most ordinary people are not in a position to protect themselves.
Yeah.
If you go and see a financial professional,
Right.
you either you're paying a premium on what he's selling you.
Yes.
But if you really want advice, then you've got to pay for it.
Yeah.
And your professional advice comes at a cost.
Yeah.
And so most ordinary people are simply, one, not in the position of having the funds. I remember once going to see a fellow with my wife, because we wanted to, do exactly that. But we wanted to benefit, but not want to increase our tax bill.
Yeah.
And we're told by the financial advisor that, I'm afraid, Mr. and Mrs. Swayne, you're not nearly wealthy enough for me to.
Damn it. It's unfortunate.
Bit of a blow to one's ego. But so I don't think there's much, if your income is from your salary,
Yes.
PAYE,
Yes.
you're stuck with what the government is doing to you.
You're at her mercy.
If not, what can you do? I mean, there are all sorts of things that you can do. I mean, for example, it's been suggested to me that I should give my house to my children now.
Yes.
And rent it back from them at a market rent, because you'd have to have a market rent.
Right.
I said, well,
That's a bit expensive.
There's a risk involved in all this. Given the propensities of families to fall out with one another.
Yes, that's true.
So there are all sorts of things that you can do, but I think basically we're all in this boat together. And the only way we're actually going to solve the problem is to vote for a government that is in favour of initiative and enterprise, and hasn't got an anti-growth agenda, and isn't determined to take your money away and spend it on benefits.
Yes, absolutely. And you also quoted in your union speech that you quoted Piglet from Winnie the Pooh, who mused that no is a very big word. Obviously, it's time for the government to start saying no more. But outside of welfare, where do you think it should kind of?
Well, first I should come.
It wasn't how you
I should fess up. I should fess up. I stole that quote from Anthony Seldon.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Amazing.
I went to a debate years ago at King's College London, I think it was, and I was up against him, and he quoted Piglet, and so it was it.
The truth is out.
Yeah. So remind me of the question.
So no is a very big word. Obviously, the government needs to start saying no to things. Apart from welfare, where should it be looking at tightening its belt?
Well, there's a huge regulatory agenda, and this is where I think we fell down. I felt that after Brexit, admittedly, the government had all sorts of other things on its plate, not least the pandemic and then the war in Iraq. But I felt that there was a legislative agenda for deregulation after Brexit. We'd acquired all these Brexit freedoms, and we didn't use them.
Yes.
I think that was certainly an issue. I mean, I think you have to ask in the end, there are areas of expenditure which, frankly, are unsustainable.
Yes.
And I think we have to be honest with voters. And I think one of them is the triple lock on pensions. If I look at my constituents, the ones that are struggling much more are young people with families.
Yes.
And I think the triple lock had its place.
Yes.
It was the right thing to do at that time, but it's a mathematical certainty that it kind of cannot go on.
Yes.
Simply on the grounds that fewer and fewer people will be available to pay the increasing bills for more and more pensioners. That's the demographics of this.
Yes.
And the state pension, remember, was never ever supposed to provide a comfortable retirement living. It was to keep the wolf from the door. You were supposed to make your own savings and contributions. And I think that ultimately we've got to try and encourage people to make much better provision for themselves.
Absolutely.
And not to rely on the state to do it, because the state simply isn't going to be able to do it, as there are fewer workers and more retirees.
Absolutely. And I guess Rachel Reeves is kind of sending the wrong message in this budget, because she's reducing the salary sacrifice limits on what you can put into your pension. She's
Yeah.
complaining about the bill and then doing
Yeah,
things
yeah,
to
it's all
exacerbate it.
exactly. You do, you know, there's always this agenda. Oh, look at those pensions building up. Let's interfere with them in one way or another.
Right, absolutely. And so you were and are, I suppose, a proud Eurosceptic, and you said in a debate that Brexit has already delivered by giving us back the power to be governed by the people that we elect and whom we can remove. And it is time for us to seize the opportunity. What is your vision for Brexit Britain?
Well, I was always skeptical that it was going to make much difference economically,
Right.
except over an extended time period.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, the people will argue one way or the other, but actually it didn't make much difference. And if you look at our performance against European comparators, Germany and France and all the rest, hey, it's not much different.
No.
We're all facing the same problems, and
Absolutely.
it doesn't make a great deal of difference. Yes, it's had a detrimental effect in our trade, merchandise trade with the European Union, but there are opportunities elsewhere. But I think the political opportunity, I mean, it just comes down to this, on the engine of decision making in the European Union is the Council of Ministers,
Right.
held in secret, in camera, no minutes.
Crazy.
And on the occasions when we really were so cross that we pushed a matter to a vote,
Yes.
because most of the time you knew our hand, you were not going to prevail, and therefore we just let it go. But on those occasions we really were angry, the 80 odd, I think 79 occasions when we really were angry, we pushed it to a vote, and we lost on 79 occasions. Either we are a self-governing nation or we are not. An increasing volume of our legislation was in fact, required of us to enact. And I think it's much better and much healthier for democracy that we run our own affairs.
Absolutely.
And other European countries can make their own decisions on that basis, whether they want to be part of this larger organization. But I just think it was completely at odds with our tradition. Remember, we were not part of that occupied. I think if you go back to Adenauer, Monet, and the others, they were determined to create a bureaucratic system because they didn't trust democracy, because after all, democracy had delivered the totalitarian dictatorships. We didn't have that experience, and I think we came from a very different tradition, and being sucked into this increasingly bureaucratic organization did not suit us. And we had that debate and we made a decision. Suck it up, live with it, move on.
Indeed, suck it up. And so you affirmed that you are loyal to the Conservative Party, here, which I think all good right-minded Conservatives should be. Why are you a Conservative?
Well, one, I'm steeped in the Conservative tradition, or traditions, because let's face it, the Conservative Party is a hodgepodge. You've got the Church and King Tory, which I regard myself as, but equally I've taken up so much from the Whig tradition. Let's face it, Maggie was really a Whig, and the National Liberals who came in, and the almost a libertarian fringe with an extreme liberal free market view of the world. And so all those traditions are in there in the Conservative Party, and I'm a child of them all. And the notion that you could just change party and abandon all that, because it hasn't moved to reform.
No.
Reform is a party of perfectly legitimate protest, but it hasn't got that deep hinterland.
Absolutely not. We've seen a few people kind of not realizing that today.
Well, I just wonder how Danny Kruger, you know, how comfortable he must feel in what is, you know, a perfectly proper populist party. Of course, you know, I've no criticism of populism, but it's not
Right.
conservatism.
No, he doesn't feel like he quite
Yeah,
fits there.
yeah.
It feels like he's in his dad's suit at like a prom or something. So what made you want to join the Conservative Party?
Well, I knew I wanted to be a politician
Yes.
because in the 1970 general election, our MP came to address us on the village green
Right.
in our little village. And he got up in the back of his Land Rover with a megaphone, and a riot ensued, and he was literally driven from the village.
Okay.
And in this, just watching this melee in which my father took part,
It's hilarious.
I thought, you know, what exciting way to make a living.
Yeah.
So I knew I always wanted to be a politician. I didn't have any ideology. I was just a schoolboy.
Yeah.
But we in 1973 did our O-level revision by candlelight because of the miners' strike, and then I went to university at St Andrews during the later 70s. It was Maggie had just become leader of the Conservative Party. Sir Keith Joseph was running that outreach to universities. I remember coming down with a group to the Centre for Policy Studies to be lectured by Peter Lilly, actually, and Sir Keith Joseph and others. And there was this great revival. I mean, the people with ideas were the people on the right.
Yes.
The Adam Smith Institute, very strong. And we certainly had that tradition in St Andrews. So I became just by osmosis a right-wing ideologue. I read Hayek and Friedman and all the rest.
Amazing. I love that. Very quickly before my last question, you said you grew up in a village, a small village. Do you think that we're doing enough to support our rural communities as Conservatives and as a nation?
Yeah, I think, but yeah, not.
Or is there
I mean,
any
there's a great deal of rural depravity, but equally there is urban depravity,
Yes.
and I'm always been a bit reluctant to sort of try and divide the electorate into different communities with different, you know,
Right.
we're a great national party, and
Yes.
we must govern as a nation.
Yes.
And you know, yes, of course, there are things living in a little village that you need. And you don't have the public transport that you have in towns, and you don't have the internet connections and all the rest. But hey, you have other huge privileges.
Yes. A nice log fire.
Yeah, quite.
Amazing.
And how long is that going to last before they take it from you?
Well, indeed. And so, lastly, just finishing up, where do you think the Conservative Party needs to be in 4 years, and what gives you hope?
Well, I think it needs to be in government.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, you know, there's no point. We didn't join a debating society.
Right.
There's no point in retreating into your ideological hinterland. You've got to get a majority of the voters to vote for you.
Yes.
You've got to have an offer that attracts the greater part of the nation, not just a faction. And how do we do that? Well, it's very difficult to tell with the polls at the moment, but this is the way I look at it. Perhaps I'm deluding myself. If you ask me, ask Joe Bloggs on the street today, if there were an election tomorrow, how will you vote? Joe Bloggs knows there isn't an election tomorrow, and you're giving him free. It's like asking him who he'd like to marry when he's already married.
Right.
You know, I can choose whichever model I like.
Yeah.
And really, here's the question. Your question is, there an election tomorrow? How would you vote? What he hears is, how angry are you?
Right.
And how are you going to show it?
Yes.
So you're for reform.
Yeah.
If you ask him that question when there is an election tomorrow, he hears a very different question. It's, how is this going to affect you and your family?
Yeah.
And that's a very different issue. And the saving grace for us at the moment is, if you look at the polling, extraordinarily, in my view, bizarrely, in my view, but nevertheless, they still regard the Conservative Party as the best party for the stewardship of the economy.
Right.
And that's the twinkle of light at the end of the tunnel.
Agree. Well, we are. Well, Sir Desmond, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for the whiskey. May I? I'm very old school Conservative. I loved it. Thank you so much.
Alcohol is a great reviver.
It is. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.